Whew. All right. Yay. So far, so good. Everything's working. So, hello and welcome. I'm really glad you're here. Whether you're here live or you're watching the replay, I'm very excited that you're taking a few minutes out of your day to learn a little bit more about what your money habits are trying to tell you. My name is Jessica Kleine, and I'm a money coach for women. And today we're going to talk about something that just about every single woman has struggled with at some point in their life, at least most of the ones that I've talked to, but very few of them tend to understand it. And that is your relationship with money. Now, this isn't going to be a typical money talk where we're going to talk about being lectured about coffee or you have to stick with a budget or something like that. This is going to be something very different. We're not talking spreadsheets. We're not talking about making you feel bad about how you spend your money. What we are going to be talking about is ways to get more curious about stuff that people never really think about to question. So that biggest question then is, why do we do what we do with our money? See that little dude in there? He makes me very happy when I was making my slides. So he shows up all the time. All right, so at some point, just about everyone has looked back at a financial decision and thought, okay, what was I even thinking? I know I have done that. I know my friends have done that. I have family members who have done that. And for sure, my clients have done that. So maybe you bought something that you didn't really need, and then you kind of pretended you didn't buy it and hid it from yourself for a while. Or maybe you avoided looking at your bank account for so long that when it was time to start checking it, it actually felt genuinely scary and like you would get a pit in your stomach. Maybe you knew exactly what you should do with your money, but then you did something completely different anyway and ultimately ended up regretting it. So if any of that sounds familiar, congratulations. You are a completely normal human being. So here's what I've been learning after years now of working with women around money. Money problems are rarely about money. It has very little to do with the actual numbers. Money problems are about emotions. They're about beliefs. They're about stories we've been telling ourselves, sometimes for decades, that are quietly shaping the decisions that we make every time we spend or save or whatever with our money. And today we're going to start to uncover some of those stories, but in what I hope is a little bit of a different and a more fun way than you may have done this before. But first, I want to tell you something that kind of comes across as a relief to a lot of people. I have worked with incredibly smart, very capable, high-achieving women in the last 7 years of my business. These women have spent years building careers, climbing their corporate ladders, raising families, running businesses, caring for, parents, and showing up basically for everybody around them. And these women, by every kind of external success metric that people would tell you, they look like they have it all together. In fact, on the outside, people often ask them, how do you do it all? But almost every single one of them at some point has looked at her bank account and thought, I make way too much money to still be living like this. Now, whether that too much money is actual too much money, or they just know it shouldn't look like this still. I shouldn't still be feeling this way. Excuse me. So I've heard it from a woman, the woman who has a great salary, a retirement account, a solid career, but she still feels like money slips through her fingers no matter what she does. I've also heard it from a woman who knows that she should ask for the raise, negotiate the contract, charge more for her work, but she somehow never does. And the woman who has read all the books and downloaded all the apps and made all the plans and tweaked all the spreadsheets, but she still finds herself avoiding her bank account week after week after week. And then there's even the woman who earns more than she ever imagined she could. She has done exactly what she went out to do, but she still feels like she's just one unexpected bill away from everything falling apart. So if any of this sounds familiar, maybe a little bit too familiar, here's the thing. If information was enough, we would all be millionaires. We would all know exactly what to do with our money. We would know exactly how to make money and how to save money and how to spend money and all of the things, because we have more access to financial education, financial literacy, YouTube, all of the things right now. We have so much access to financial information more than any other generation in history. But money stress is at an all-time high. So today I'm going to introduce you to a framework called Sacred Money Archetypes. This was developed by Kendall Summerhawk, and as one of her certified coaches, I have found it to be kind of one of the tools in my toolbox that's a super useful tool and kind of fun for understanding why we do with what we do with our money. The women I've worked with, there's been a wide range of income, wide range of family, wide range of just about everything, but they all tend to have similar stories and similar problems no matter what level they're at. So archetypes have been around forever. You know, humans love stories, so we tend to build these characters. And an archetype is basically a universal character that lives kind of across generations and across cultures. An archetype is something that is recognizable kind of no matter where you are in the world. So for example, if we say a hero, we know who the hero is. The hero is the one who saves the day. If we say a mentor, we picture like a Yoda or some kind of a wise, sagey kind of person or a wizard, you know, like somebody who's lived it and is helping somebody else through it. We say a rebel, we have a mind picture of what a rebel do and what they would look like or what they would sound like. Those are archetypes. Now, in Sacred Money Archetypes, Kendall discovered 8 of them around money. Each one represents a distinct money personality. So there's a set of strengths, a set of challenges, and a set of stories that go with each archetype. Now, before we go kind of anywhere further, I want to be very clear because I see this happen. I do it myself. This is not about putting yourself in a box, okay? This is not about labeling yourself as good or bad with money because you're going to have thoughts in your head about which archetypes are good with money and which archetypes are bad with money. And this is definitely not deciding that your archetype is the reason your money may not be the way you want it to be right now, okay? It's not a way to kind of blame an outside source, even though they live in our head. Again, I'm very good at this myself. So kind of to warn you ahead of time, the archetypes are more about becoming curious and looking at things a little bit differently than you've done before. Curiosity ends up creating awareness. If you're curious and you're asking questions, you start to become aware of more options and more ideas and more thoughts. And then once you have that awareness, you can now create different choices, okay? So my hope is that by the end of the time we're together today, you'll look at some of your money habits in a different light, okay? You might find yourself saying, well, that explains a lot, because for sure, at least one of these archetypes are going to jump out at you and you're going to be like, huh, that's the goal of this whole thing. All right, so let's meet some of these hidden personalities. Now, here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to do my best to describe someone to you. And I want you to see if you recognize the character I'm describing, okay? It's not an actual character, but somebody in your life might fit this quality or the qualities that go in here. It might be you, it might be your best friend, it might be your mom. We're not judging. We're not judging the people. We're not judging the archetypes. We're instead kind of using this as a tool to recognize some of the different thoughts and some of the different stories. And as we go through them, you might notice a spouse that maybe is one type of personality that sounds familiar, whereas you're a different one. And that will start explaining a lot about how you interact in work relationships, parental type relationships, romantic relationships, all sorts of stuff. Anywhere that money touches, these archetypes can kind of give you a little bit of guidelines on how you can better understand not only yourself, but also the people around you. That's also true for in the workplace and if you're a business owner. If you start to realize certain archetypes might be better for business or better for clients or easier for you to work with, easier because we know how that goes. Just kind of file that away in the back of your head, okay? So first I want you to picture this person. This person needs to buy a toaster. They have enough money to buy the toaster. They could probably buy 3 toasters. They might even buy 4 toasters if they're having a good month. But they are currently on tab 23 of a deep dive research session because what if there's a better toaster? What if this toaster has a lower energy rating than the one that's 3 tabs over? And what if the reviews on this toaster were actually secretly planted by the manufacturer? How do we trust it? 6 days later, they still have not bought a toaster. They're still eating their bread cold, but they are very informed at this point, okay? So the accumulator is someone who finds deep security in keeping and having their resources. Think like hoarder, but not to the extreme of the hoarder TV show, okay? Accumulators are people who others assume are really good with money because they tend to have money in the bank. But money in the bank feels like oxygen to them, okay? They are research driven, they're very careful, And they're very thoughtful with their finances. That's usually considered a good thing. So the strengths of the accumulator is they almost never will make an impulsive financial decision. Accumulators need some time and some space to make a decision and weigh all their options and the pros and the cons. They're usually excellent savers and really good long-term planning, and they tend to ask really good questions before making any kind of a major move. Now, the challenge, or we'll call it the shadow side for the purposes of this, is they might delay decisions so long that opportunities end up passing them by. Spending on themselves, even when they can 100% afford it, can feel very uncomfortable to an accumulator. They don't like spending any kind of money if it's not a need. And the fear of what if I run out tends to override their logic. So they have a hidden story. As I mentioned, these different archetypes are going to have strengths, challenges, and kind of a story that runs in the background, one of many. But the hidden story that might be running in the background of an accumulator is, if I spend this, I might lose my security or I might be unsafe. And that belief was probably installed a really, really long time ago. So for those of you who don't yet know, all of our money thoughts, our money mindset, our money stories, our beliefs, all of that was kind of pre-programmed when we were very, very small by the people who we were with, who were caregivers, teachers, leaders in our family, all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of these were programmed many, many moons ago. Now, the next character. This person over-delivers before anyone asks. If someone makes a request at work, and then she's already done 3 extra things that they didn't ask for, okay? Maybe a friend mentions that they're having a problem, and she's already researching solutions on their behalf. She says yes before she's ever even checked whether or not she has the bandwidth to say yes. She volunteers for things. She always stays late. She gives discounts before her clients ask for them, or she will 100% just skip the negotiation completely because she doesn't want to seem like she's being difficult, okay? But then she wonders, usually quietly, why she always ends up exhausted. The nurturer is a very deeply caring, deeply generous, and very, very motivated by wanting to help people person. She is the person that everyone calls when they need support. And her energy actually lights up when she's in service. So her love language would be acts of service. She thrives helping other people. So the strengths of the nurturer, she naturally builds a lot of trust and deep relationships. People are easy for her. She tends to give very generously. She gives her time, she gives her energy, she gives her care, she gives her money. She gives and gives and gives and gives and gives. She is kind of the definition of the pouring from an empty cup. She also can create experiences for others that are very warm and memorable. People will remember her because people like when people pay attention to you. If somebody pays attention to you, you tend to remember that person. So a nurturer one is somebody who tends to be pretty memorable. Now, the shadow side of the nurturer, she undervalues herself all of the time. In work, in business, in life, in relationships, kind of all across the board. She is the one who will kind of knock herself down. She will also tend to overgive until she's running on empty, again, pouring from an empty cup. And for this particular archetype, saying no feels like a betrayal because her values are so much on the yes. She's a yes person. So if she has to say no, it crushes her. So the story underneath for a nurturer tends to be, if I ask for what I'm worth, whether that's more money, better terms, a raise, even just a boundary, people won't like me. They'll think I only care about myself. They'll think I'm selfish. That's the story that's kind of running under the nurturer. And because somewhere along the way, she somehow tied up that being good means putting everybody else first. Lots of us knew a lot of nurturers. Now, the ruler has a financial tracking spreadsheet and a backup spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet has color coding. And there's probably another document somewhere that is basically the spreadsheet, but about different spreadsheets, okay? This ruler, she knows her numbers. She has goals. She has a 5-year plan, and she has a backup plan for all of her backup plans. She knows what she is doing. She is a leader. And somewhere underneath all that structure, there's also kind of a constant humming, okay? It's a sense that if she just works a little harder, if she does a little bit more, if she achieves a little bit more, then maybe she can finally relax. Okay, the ruler is basically the workaholic. That is this archetype. Now, the ruler is powerful and driven and very, very capable. She is, as I said, the leader. She creates systems that work. She gets things done. She has really big dreams and she's really good at going after them. So she's got a lot of strengths. All of them have a lot of strengths, but some of the strengths of the ruler, she's incredibly organized and she knows her finances. She's financially literate to a point. She sets very clear goals and creates the paths to be able to get to them. She has a very strong sense of vision for what she's building. Like she is the empire builder. She's the one that you know is out there to change the world. But the challenges of a ruler, she can become controlling as a way to manage her own anxiety. And she may push herself and others past what would be considered like reasonable limits. Boundaries are not necessarily a thing for her own or other people's. And rest can feel like a failure. She will not take breaks. She will just keep going and keep going and keep going, basically until she gets burned out. So the story behind the ruler is if I slow down, I'll fall behind. And very much my worth comes from what I achieve. She's the high achiever, overachiever kind of archetype. Now, the alchemist probably got a new idea while watching this workshop. She's a visionary. She's creative. She can see possibility where other people see chaos. And she has almost like a magic ability to attract resources, opportunities, and the right people at the right time. She is that person that you would look at and be like, wow, she's really lucky, because it just seems that way. She is very passionate about what she believes in. And things tend to always have a way of working out for her. And she believes it. She pretty much is pretty set on it's going to work out. And it's mostly true because she does believe that. Now, the strengths of the alchemist, she's exceptionally intuitive about money and opportunity. She can create and manifest in remarkable ways. As I mentioned, she appears to be lucky because things just seem to fall in her lap. And if something doesn't work out for her, she tends to land on her feet. She can snap back pretty quickly, even in challenging circumstances. But the shadow side of the alchemist is she can be inconsistent with the practical, boring, necessary parts of finance, business, life, all of that. She could be a little bit disorganized. She has a motto of I'll figure it out, but that can also be a way to avoid making any kind of real plan. She's very much a go with the flow, and a plan kind of cramps her style. She may also overspend on inspiration when it hits. She gets lots of ideas and lots of, again, visionary kind of thoughts of things to do. So she may start overspending and get really excited about something, but not paying any attention to building a solid foundation first. So the story for the alchemist is things always work out for me, and structure feels like it limits my flow, which is beautiful, but also kind of can result in some interesting conversations with accountants. Alchemists are very creative and go with the flow, and also, if not kind of having a checks and balances set up, can get themselves in trouble. Now, the connector knows everyone. We all know connectors. I can think of at least two in my brain right now. And some of you in this room know exactly who I'm talking about. She is generally happy about knowing everybody. She is a people person, even if she doesn't think she is. Now, she refers people before they ask for referrals. She makes introductions at parties. She probably sent you an article last week that was actually really helpful. She remembered that your sister was going through something 6 months ago, and she'll check in to see how you're doing with it. She's the one who everybody calls, which is wonderful, but right up until it's not. The connector thrives in relationship. She understands that people are everything in work, in life, in every area. And so she's naturally kind of exceptional at building those relationships. She doesn't try to do it, it just happens for her. So the connectors have a lot of strengths. They can build a very wide, very loyal network with ease. It's not hard for them to meet people and talk to new people and make connections between people. And those relationships tend to open doors that other people didn't even know existed. You know, she's the one that's going to connect you to somebody that all of a sudden you have this big new plan in place, or a new collaboration, or a job offer that you didn't know was even going to be a thing. And people trust her. And that trust is very well earned. She is very, very careful to make sure she maintains her relationships and doesn't break the trust. Now, the shadow side of the connector is she can give endlessly without ever asking for what she needs in return. She will definitely overextend, and that can be a risk, emotionally and financially. And her generosity can come from a place of fear or not being needed or not being enough, as opposed to just from being generous. Okay, so there's like that little bit of a shadow that goes with that. So the story for the connector is if I ask for what I need, whether it's more money, more recognition, more support, I'm being selfish. And then what if people stop showing up for me? The celebrity. The celebrity got all dressed up for this Zoom. She is probably the only one that would have a ring light. Her background is very intentional. She showed up and thought, I want to look like I belong in a movie. Okay, that's a little extreme, but you get the gist. The celebrity loves beauty and quality and experiences. She appreciates the finer things in life, not because she's shallow, but because she generally, it's going to be that kind of rest of the day, believes that she and others, the lifestyle that she is living or wanting to live is deserved. She deserves to be beautiful and to be known. And that's not necessarily a bad way of thinking. Now, the strengths of celebrity, they naturally draw attention and create memorable impressions. Again, the celebrity walks into the room and everybody turns their head. She's that one that can catch everybody's attention. She's on stages. She does that. She likes to show up in front of people. She invests in herself. Her appearance, it could be her education. She invests in experiences without apology. Like she is worth it and she's going to do it no matter the cost. And her self-worth is very, very strong. She believes she's worthy of all of the finer things in life. Now, the shadow side, there are some challenges. They can overspend on image or status because those are so important to them, especially when they're stressed. So if things aren't going their way, that's when the overspending can happen on, again, the image or the things of status. The things would kind of rank them up in their brain. They may use spending as a way of feeling worthy or in control. So again, lots of self-worth or lots of, I deserve this, but the shadow side is they can be overspending to kind of make sure that feeling stays. Because sometimes the gap between the image that she puts out there to the rest of the world and the actual financial reality behind the scenes can become exhausting to maintain. So the story of the celebrity is, I deserve this, which is true. But the shadow is when I deserve this becomes a way to avoid looking at reality. Okay, so that's one of the issues with a celebrity. And then finally, I think this is the last one. This is the romantic. Now, the romantic archetype probably bought that expensive candle at the farmer's market because it made her feel something. The romantic is not irresponsible. She's not reckless, but she responds to beauty and feeling and emotions in a way that occasionally can have some financial consequences. She will make the purchases that make her feel good, kind of regardless of what happens on the other side. She is the person who can walk into a boutique just to kind of take a look and just to peruse, but she'll walk out having made a decision that at the time felt completely emotionally right. Like she walks in just to look, finds something she falls in love with, purchases it, but then is slightly confused 3 days later as to why she did that. Okay? The romantic lives richly, or at least wants to. She experiences the world very, very deeply, and she brings that depth into everything she does, whether it's her career, her business, her family. She is a very, very deep individual. Now, her strengths is she creates rich, meaningful experiences for herself and for others. She deeply, deeply values quality over quantity. And she has a way of like infusing emotion and meaning into her work and relationships. Emotions are very, very important for her. Now, the challenge is she can use spending as a way to kind of do emotional regulation, basically retail therapy, because it feels good in the moment. And she probably avoids looking at finances because reality feels less interesting than the vision she has of herself. She sees how she wants to be, and she doesn't want to bother with what she actually is right now. And the practical side of doing anything with money can feel boring or dry or joyless and kind of beneath her. She just doesn't want to be bothered with it. So the story for the romantic is money should feel good. If it feels hard or scary, I'd rather not look at it right now. Oh, I was wrong. There's one more. The Maverick. That's funny that this one was the one I forgot. The Maverick doesn't do things the normal way. She tried the normal way. The normal way was boring and probably also wrong. Okay. She is the one that will burn it all down and not care and build something else brand new. She has a higher than average risk tolerance, which can be super inspiring or terrifying depending on who you ask. Okay. The Maverick just does not care. She's probably made some bold financial decisions that made everybody around her very, very nervous. And then it probably worked out, which really did not help anybody's nerves. Like, there's not a lesson that gets learned because it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and she just keeps going and going and going. The Maverick is very innovative, very independent, generally energized by challenge. Like, she will seek out challenges and does not want to take the easy way. She's not afraid of failure in the way that most people are. Like I said before, she's willing to burn it down in order to try something new. So the strengths of the Maverick, she's bold and creative and not afraid to bet on herself. She's willing to take some calculated risks that others won't, very often. And she thrives in change and often creates it. She's going to be the one that makes the waves. She's the one that's going to make people kind of think or realize things a little bit differently. Now, the shadow of the Maverick, she will take risks without fully thinking through the downside. Like she also has a I can do it kind of attitude without really plotting all the points in the future. She can have a very complicated relationship with financial structures and routines. Mavericks do not like routines. Mavericks want to be left alone and not have to follow anybody else's rules because rules for other people are things that they don't like following. And by not following them, they kind of cause some problems. So the story for the Maverick is I don't need a plan. I know what I'm doing, which again, sometimes that's true and that absolutely can work out. And sometimes that's a belief that can create the most chaos in their lives. Click. Uh-oh. There it is. All right, so you've just met those 8 money personalities or money archetypes. And maybe you saw yourself in one of them. Maybe you saw yourself in like 3 of them. Maybe you thought, I'm definitely not, say, a romantic. But then maybe you remembered that fancy perfume you bought one time 3 years ago. You know, we have a little bit of all of them inside of us. There's a good mix. They all live inside. It's just some of them are louder than others and tend to kind of take center stage. So here's what I need you to know now is that the goal is not to become a different archetype. Okay. I want to say that again because it's very important. The goal is not to become a different archetype. The goal is not to try to fix the nurturer softness or control the Maverick's boldness or to make the romantic stop feeling things so deeply because these qualities are actually strengths. Sometimes they're just kind of running the show without your permission. They're a little too loud, a little too much for the moment of, whatever that financial situation is that's going on. So after years of doing this kind of work, each archetype has that story underneath it, okay? There's a belief, there's a pattern that was probably installed, this program that was installed before you were old enough to question it. It's just the way it is, right? So the accumulator who researches every purchase for 6 days, her story might be, if I spend this, I might lose my security. Maybe she watched her family struggle. Maybe she learned early that money was unpredictable or unsafe. And now, decades later, that little girl's fears from how she grew up is still running her financial decisions. The nurturer who can't ask for the raise, can't negotiate the rate, can't stop giving more than she's getting, her story is probably along the lines of, if I ask for what I'm worth, people won't like me. And somewhere along the line, she learned that her value came from what she gave, from who liked her, from how she could help others, not from who she was. She was raised to be a people pleaser. That's the programming that she has. The ruler who can't stop working, who has achieved more than ever before, more than she planned, and she still can't rest. Her story might be, my worth comes from what I achieve. If I slow down, I'll fall behind. If I fall behind, I might lose everything I've worked for. Not because that's actually true, but because that's the story that she inherited from watching others who kind of sold her their definition of success in her life. She had some kind of a role model who, you're going to work hard if you're going to succeed. That kind of mentality was what was drilled into her when she was little. The romantic who avoids her bank account. Her story might be money is hard and stressful and I deserve to feel good, not bad. So spending becomes a way to feel okay, even if it's just temporary. She might have learned this from watching a caregiver splurge on things and feel great, but then she might not have ever seen the repercussions that happened afterwards. So none of these stories are wrong. None of them make a person broken. None of them mean you're bad. None of them mean that there's something wrong with you. These stories all make total sense given from your history, from your family, from how you were raised, from what experiences you had as a kid. Our money stories and beliefs were passed down and programmed when we were young. Not only that, we have our parents' money stories or our caregivers' money stories that were passed down to them. So we have generational kinds of stories that we're all needing to kind of wake up to. But here is one of the questions that's worth asking about your stories. Is this story still serving you? Because the story made sense then when you were little. It might have even made sense 5 years ago before this awareness kind of tickles your brain. But the question is whether it's helping you now. This is where things start to get interesting. Because when you can see the story, like really see it, you can start asking different questions. So instead of, why am I so bad with money? You can start asking yourself, okay, what story is running right now? And is this helping me? Instead of, I make good money, why does it still feel like this? You can ask yourself, okay, what fear is underneath this feeling? What does this pattern that I keep going over and over and over again protect me from? That shift from judging ourselves, from shaming ourselves, from feeling bad about ourselves into curiosity is where I have watched women kind of completely change their relationship with money. Not because they got more information. Again, there's a jillion bits of information out in the world right now. It's not because they finally found a perfect budget. It's not because they finally found the perfect spreadsheet or the perfect job or the perfect this or perfect that. It's because they finally understood themselves. So if you found yourself nodding along today, and if you saw some patterns that you maybe recognized, or maybe some of the stories, or you felt that little like, that could be me, then the next step is to go deeper. And one of the first questions I always get is, how do I know which archetype is mine? Oh no, I just realized my next slide is wrong. My quiz link is not, in fact, there. So the Sacred Money Archetypes assessment is a quiz that identifies which archetypes are the most active in your life. And I'll tell you this, sometimes the results are exactly what you expect. For mine, it was pretty obvious. I knew for sure one of my top ones was going to be. So for me, like, I'm an accumulator, for sure. Absolutely, 100%. But sometimes the results can be a surprise. And that surprise is where some of the different kind of important conversations can start. Because the archetype that you didn't think you were might be the one who's running the show in the background. So this is just one of the different tools that I use in my coaching practice. I am going to, once I figure out how to flip around my screens again, I will share the actual link for the quiz in the chat so you get it, because obviously I skipped that part. The quiz, just so you know, it takes some time. Like, it gets pretty in depth. There's a lot of different sections because it's going to rank. When you get your results, it'll rank all of your different archetypes. And you're going to want to pay attention to your top 3, not just your top 1, just as a little heads up. Now, before I let you go, I want to leave you with something. You are not your money mistakes. You're not your debt. You're not your spending habits. You're not your savings balance. You're not the number in your bank account right now. You are not the woman who should have figured this all out by now. Okay. Most of the women who come to me have a lot of weight on their shoulders because they feel like this. You are just a human being with patterns. Okay. And patterns can be understood. Once they're understood, then they can be changed. Until you can see the pattern and become aware of the pattern, you cannot change the pattern. And the most powerful thing that you can do today, don't go and overhaul your entire budget. Don't go open a new investment account or do something dramatic. Don't go sell your house. Don't do anything crazy because your archetype says so. The most powerful thing that you can do today is just to get a little curious, okay? Ask yourself, which of these archetypes felt familiar? What story might be underneath the archetype? Is that story helping me, or is it time to look at things a little bit more honestly? That curiosity, that's where everything starts. Because if we're curious, we're asking questions, and that gives our brain a chance to go find answers, as opposed to having judgments and this is just the way I am, that shuts your brain down and does not give it space to be open to any other opportunities or possibilities. So this is the beginning of what could generally be a different relationship with money, which is really what all of us want, even if we don't know it. So thank you for being here today. I love talking about money archetypes. It's not something I do very often. So it was kind of a fun way to get back into it because it's been a little while since I've brought these guys out again. So take the quiz. I will give you the link. Take the quiz, get a little bit more insight into yourself. Book an inner compass session if you're ready to go even deeper. And most of all, just stay curious. Okay?